In the lonely deserts of 1880s Arizona, a frightened Apache woman seeks one night of safety, and a quiet rancher gives her more kindness than she expected. But morning brings a harder question. Can she trust him, or is he like everyone else who betrayed her? Join this emotional Wild West journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the story. Let's get started. The outskirts of the 1880s Arizona town were unforgiving at dusk. The cold crept across the open land, slipping between the tall sagebrush and slithering through the empty road where Leah, a young Apache woman, stood alone. She held her arms tightly around herself, trying to trap whatever warmth remained. Every wagon that passed slowed only long enough for its riders to stare. Some whispered, avoiding eye contact as though speaking to her would bring trouble. Others looked at her with suspicion, or worse. She had been traveling for days, relying on worn instincts, but even her strength was thinning as the sun dipped behind the desert hills. The night promised to be harsh, colder than the last, and her legs trembled from exhaustion. Hunger gnawed at her ribs, yet she kept her chin raised, refusing to appear weak, despite the fear curling inside her. She had survived worse nights, worse men, and worse storms. Still, this night felt different, quieter, more dangerous. She watched the road, waiting for a sign of shelter. When she heard hoofbeats approaching, her body tensed. A lone rider often meant trouble. She dared not run. She had nowhere to go. So she steadied her stance, preparing for whatever came next. The rider slowed as he drew nearer, and the lantern on his saddle revealed a tall, broad-shouldered rancher with dust on his coat and weariness in his eyes. He didn't stare at her the way others did. He simply studied her with calm concern, the type a man wore when he saw someone suffering but didn't know whether stepping in would harm more than help. His horse stopped without a command, sensing its rider's hesitation. Leah shifted slightly, preparing to move if he approached too quickly. But he didn't. The rancher dismounted slowly, his hands lifted in a peaceful gesture. His voice was steady, touched by a gentle drawl. "Evening, ma'am. You look near frozen. You need a warm place for the night?" The sincerity in his tone startled her more than the offer itself. Most white men she had met never offered help without a hidden exchange. She searched his face for signs of deception, but found only a quiet, sincere expression. He introduced himself softly. "Name's Eli Turner. Got a ranch not far from here. You're welcome to rest in the barn if you need it." The barn, not the house, told her he respected the unspoken boundaries between strangers. Leah hesitated. Memories of false kindness flashed through her mind, voices that promised safety only to steal it moments later. She wrapped her shawl tighter, unsure whether this man was any different. Yet the night wind grew colder, slicing through her like a blade. She looked past him toward the horizon. No campfires, no movement, no escape. Her body trembled. Finally, with cautious eyes, she gave a small nod. Eli stepped back immediately, allowing her to move first. That single step backward eased a sliver of her fear. A dangerous man would have stepped forward, not away. The barn stood quietly behind Eli's modest ranch house, its wooden boards glowing under the lantern light. Inside, the air was warm from the body heat of the horses, and the soft rustling of hay made the place feel strangely welcoming. Eli set down a blanket on a clean pile of straw and placed a small lantern beside it. Then he retrieved a tin cup, filled it with fresh water from the pump outside, and set it within her reach. His movements were careful, deliberate, never rushed, never forceful. Leah watched him closely, noting how he kept his distance even in the small space. He stepped outside without lingering. "You're safe here tonight," he said, his voice drifting in gently through the barn door. "I'll be in the house if you need anything." Then he closed the door behind him, leaving her alone with the horses and the soft glow of the lantern. Leah stood still for several heartbeats, listening for footsteps returning. None came. Slowly she lowered herself onto the blanket. Her fingers brushed the fabric. It was warm, softer than she expected. She didn't understand why a stranger would go through such trouble for her, and that uncertainty felt like a weight on her chest. As the fire he'd prepared crackled softly in the metal stove, warmth spread through the barn. Leah let herself breathe more deeply, though her eyes stayed alert. She sipped the water cautiously, half expecting bitterness or trickery, but it was clean and cold. Her thoughts drifted to the road. How long she had walked, how many times she thought she wouldn't survive another night alone. For the first time in many months, her fear loosened just enough for exhaustion to creep in. She lay back against the hay, listening to the steady breathing of the horses as if their calmness could lend her some of its peace. Sleep did not come easily. Every sound made her flinch, the shifting of the barn doors, the distant howl of a coyote, the rustle of hay beneath her body. But slowly, as the minutes passed, her heartbeat steadied. She remembered Eli's gentle tone, his choice to step back, his refusal to crowd her. She thought of the sincere worry in his eyes, a look she had not seen since before her world had crumbled. It frightened her to feel comfort. Comfort usually meant danger in disguise. Yet tonight, the warmth of the fire soothed her trembling bones in a way she couldn't fight. When she finally drifted into sleep, it was with one final wary thought. No kindness came without cost. Every man she had met had wanted something. Land, labor, loyalty, or something. But as her eyelids grew heavy and the quiet settled around her like a blanket, another whisper rose within her, one she had almost forgotten. A whisper that said not every stranger intended harm. She didn't believe it fully, but she believed it enough to let her guard drop just a fraction. For the first time in months she slept without fear, sharpening her senses. The fire warmed her back, the horses shifted softly beside her, and though her heart insisted this comfort might come with a price, something deep inside her hoped, just quietly, that she might finally be wrong. The morning light stretched across the open Arizona sky, painting the horizon gold as Leah stepped out of the barn. The blanket Eli had given her still clung to her shoulders, offering a warmth she wasn't used to waking up with. For months she had survived on fear, instinct and distance, from people, from towns, from promises that always came with a hidden cost. But now, as she watched Eli moving quietly among his horses, she felt a strange discomfort. He expected nothing. No questions, no pressure, no demands. That alone made her heartbeat tighten with a kind of fear she didn't yet understand. Eli stood with his back to her, brushing down a chestnut mare with slow, rhythmic strokes. His movements were steady, almost peaceful, as if he were a man who had learned to live with silence instead of filling it. Leah studied him carefully, trying to read the intentions that most men failed to hide. A night of shelter was rarely just shelter. A warm fire usually required repayment, and kindness, true kindness, was something she had learned did not come without strings. She stepped closer, the frozen dirt crunching under her feet, unsure how close she was allowed to stand. Her voice came out tighter than she intended. "You offered safety for the night." The words hung in the cold morning air, sharp and trembling. Eli paused but did not turn. He let the mare nudge his shoulder before gently brushing along her neck again. Leah swallowed, forcing out the question that had burned her since dawn. "But will you still keep your word in the morning?" The weight of her past sat behind those words. Broken treaties, broken trust, broken promises. She expected him to flinch, to sigh, to reveal the hidden catch. Most men revealed their true nature quickly. Instead, Eli turned slowly, almost surprised that she thought the question needed asking. His eyes didn't hold pity, they held understanding. "Miss," he said quietly, "I don't give my word lightly." He removed his hat, ran a hand through his dust-browned hair, and continued, "You're free to stay, to rest, or to leave. No one here owns you, not last night, not now." His voice was plain but steady, the kind that carried no grand speeches, just truth. Leia felt the unfamiliar sting of confusion. Men rarely spoke like that. Not with sincerity, not without wanting something in return. She took a step closer, scanning his face for the tiny signs that exposed lies, the twitch of an eye, the tightening of a jaw, the subtle tilt of greed or desire. She had learned to read people with the precision of survival, but all she found in Eli was quiet steadiness, a soft calmness that made her feel more off-balance than danger ever had. "Why?" she asked before she could stop herself. Eli blinked, puzzled. "Why what? Why help me if you don't want anything?" Her voice cracked at the end, and she hated how unguarded it sounded. Eli leaned his forearms against the corral fence, looking out toward the distant hills. "Because it was cold last night," he answered simply. "Because you looked tired. Because sometimes the right thing doesn't need a reason bigger than that." Leia shook her head slowly, not understanding how a man could mean such words without expecting repayment. Kindness was a language spoken only as bait where she came from. The idea that someone could offer it freely felt like a story told to children. Beautiful, but not real. She kept waiting for the truth to reveal itself, for the trap to spring. A gentle breeze lifted the loose strands of her hair as she lowered the blanket from her shoulders. Her heart battled between instinct and curiosity, one warning her to run, the other whispering that maybe, just maybe, not every man carried the same hunger. Eli continued feeding the horses, never looking at her too long, never invading her space. That alone unsettled her. Most men looked too long. Finally, she exhaled softly. "You don't know me," she said. "You don't know what trouble follows me." Eli shrugged. "Then trouble can rest too. Everyone deserves a place to breathe." His words landed with unexpected gentleness, like a blanket she didn't know how to accept but couldn't pull away from either. She wrapped her arms around herself, unsure whether the tremble she felt came from the cold or from something breaking loose inside her. "You really expect nothing?" she whispered. Eli shook his head. "No, ma'am, not from you." The simplicity of the statement felt heavier than any demand could. Leia took a slow breath, letting the morning sun warm her face. For the first time in a long time, the air didn't feel like it was closing in around her. Trust was not something she offered easily. It had been torn, exploited, shattered, until it felt almost dangerous to hope again. But as she watched Eli work, his steady hands, his respectful silence, his willingness to let her choose her own next step, something unfamiliar stirred inside her chest. Not trust fully, not peace, not the security she once knew, but a spark, a flicker, a small, cautious opening she couldn't ignore. "I'll stay a little longer," she finally murmured, her voice barely above the hum of the morning wind. Eli nodded, no smile, no victory, just acceptance. As she stood beside him, the world felt strangely balanced, as though for the first time the ground beneath her feet was not shifting. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or how long this fragile truce between past and present would last. But she knew one thing with certainty. This man, this ranch, this quiet morning. It held no traps, no chains, no hidden bargains. Just space, just gentleness, just the promise of another sunrise untainted by fear. And for a wounded soul like hers, that tiny promise was enough to make her stay, at least for now.